Yep.
Okay, so we're live. This is the very first Liars Club podcast. If you're thinking that neither of the three of us don't know nothing about this, you're absolutely correct.
Just swinging it.
Yep. So
Doing it
uh,
live.
this podcast will usually be me and ActivatedAlien and at least one guest, probably exactly one guest. And today joining us is Ellibereth from Mafia 451. So thank you for joining us, Ellie.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
So today we're gonna show off this widget which you see on your screen, which is a replay widget for Mafia games that happen. But before we show off that and show off a game that Ellie took part in and maybe misplayed a bit, and we're gonna go over.
Wow, don't introduce it that way.
It was still a glorious Mafia
I think
victory.
Ellie played fine. If there's anyone who misplayed there, it was not.
It was just a mind-blowing Mafia victory with a lot of
Multiple debatable plays.
multiple debatable plays. Sounds good. But before that, we have a few talking points we want to get over. So they're dealing with the Mafia League Liars Club is putting together, in which Ellie is playing, and quite a few non-video Mafia people are playing, non-usual video Mafia players are playing. So the first talking point we have is the complexity of the setup that we have. And what we want to discuss here is we usually see Mafia as this two-team game with very few special roles, which you can explain to somebody in less than 2 or 3 minutes. And the opposite of that is this setup which we've put together. So if you're in chat, I'm just gonna show you all the rows. So if you type !rows 13, which is gonna be the usual Mafia setup we're gonna play with this league, you see all these other rows that it's a rows orgy essentially. There's only 5 vanilla townspeople. So, Ellie, what are your thoughts as a newcomer to our ecosystem of Liars Club setups? What is your impression of this row heavy setup?
When I first heard about it, I think the most important thing was you were doing one setup for a whole season. Yeah. And what this reminded me a lot was the difference between something like chess, where you play one game for the entire duration of the game, and something like StarCraft, where competitively, every season is heavily dictated by the maps they choose. The games are completely dictated by the maps. And I think, especially in the stage Mafia is now, the good points of a complex setup is not everyone has figured it out. There's no correct opening. There's no correct up-the-table based ending. People will still screw up. There will be a few players who do research, and even their conclusions might not be totally sound. Right? So especially for a league of short duration, I think a complicated setup is good because just thinking about the mechanics is a skill in itself. It's an entertaining one. It's one anyone can do. Is this play better than this here? Is this play better than this here? It was certainly a bit confusing for me when I first heard it because I'm used to one alignment versus one alignment games and three at most. But the single largest difference is in almost every other context, it's every game for itself in a way. Well, this is a huge set of games trying to decide an outcome, not a bunch of small individual outcomes.
I see.
Yeah. So then specifically, if it doesn't have to be everyone wins the same amount of time, yeah, because
Yep.
there's so many games. So I think the setup is good for the format.
Yeah.
Sure. So, just to clarify, what you mean is since we don't take your one best game and then rank you on that, but we take your 5 best games out of 8, even if there's some variance involved in the game outcomes just based on the initial randomization of the game, that should cancel out in the long run. Or...
No, and it's the cohesiveness. In a normal game, if you draw Alien and you lose or you win, for example, there's no weighted average. You just lost or you won. Right? In the league, you're rewarded for winning with a lower percentage roll. There's no concrete reward for winning in a normal game, right? The reward here is you get more points, and I think that's important when you choose a setup like this. There has to be a reward for doing low probability maneuvers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I think that's a function of the fact that the scoring came after the setup. It's not that you can argue that the principles from our scoring are generalizable, but I think they were derived very much from the fact that we knew that we had a game in which not all the teams have an equal chance of winning, and we need a way to still do our best to fairly reward the people who get those like lower expected value roles and still manage to do well with them.
Yeah, I think the biggest question of the setup is when it becomes stale, and we shall see. Yeah, because there are arguments for different setup every season or something.
Sure.
Because I think the work of figuring out a setup for the participant is part of the fun, part of the competition, right? Who's figured out the setup better? There eventually will come a point where there are openings and there are endings, or the equivalent. Right?
Well, we already see that, right? We already see
Right.
this with every
Yeah.
game. Every game starts with almost uniformly, Cupid should claim. Right? That's your like E4, if you will.
And then there's an argument on should Hunter claim, and that's if Knight of 3 is good. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But just for background, so Alan and I have been playing with this setup for almost 4.5 years now, and if we haven't been able to break the setup in that long and make it feel stale, I'm doubtful that we're gonna see it become stale over like 30 games in a league, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna see like who's doing their homework just in terms of like I have this play I want to do as a bomb, like Rich especially, like shout out to Rich for like putting in so much time into this. But Rich had this exciting play in which he wanted to fake claim police officers bomb day one, and then he landed the bomb and he did it. So I think we're gonna see at least one or two of these instances in which like a player has this elaborate plan of exactly what to do. And Alien is like ActivatedAlien is known for doing these plays in his mind. Like he's told me having dreams about these plays. So do you think that we can ever get to the point in which a setup with so much initial starting states can get stale in a way? Like what would lead to that? Alan?
Yeah. I mean, again, as like your partner on this, right? Like I'm fairly optimistic it won't get stale anytime soon. But I think so. Okay, I guess I'll say why I don't think it'll get stale, and then maybe Ellie can push back on it as the sort of the person who's the outsider to this. Like one is the high number of starting states, right? So the thief and the lovers introduce a lot of variance into the game in terms of like obviously what is in the game, and given that something is always missing, and given that two people are usually paired up in some way, that creates enough complications and enough novel situations from game to game that there's always something legitimately new to figure out, even if you get the same role. The second is that it takes a while for you as an individual to play as all the roles, right? You may have to play, I mean, you may never play as a certain role for a very, very long time, right? It can take, I don't know how long it takes us to get each role at least once, but I imagine it takes more games than the league for sure, right? So there's also that aspect, which is you may also be not incentivized to think about plays as, say, the prostitute till you get that role and you're in the situation where you have some information and you have to figure out what to do with it. So I think those two factors mean that it's not going to get stale for a while. But that puts it that makes it different from more simple Mafia setups where you have Mafia in town. There are fewer roles, right, that you can be. And so you hit all of them quicker and you can figure out the plays that you want to make for each of them quicker.
No, I certainly agree that there will be many unique situations. The question is, how different are those unique situations from a viewer perspective or player perspective? Like, there are many different setups where there's a very similar course of action you should take once you figure it out and you think about it once.
Sure.
Right? You guys, I guess also you've played this live only until now, right?
Until now, yes.
Yeah, and there are a lot more people thinking about it. There are a lot more people working at it. There might be a lot more people publishing and trying to push what is correct about it.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
That would make us very happy.
And another analogy you can draw is something like card games. Yeah? Like,
Yep.
Okay, partially the format changes every season because they need to make money, but partially it is to freshen up. Most of it is to freshen up the game.
Sure.
Right? And the whole quote-unquote deck building portion is a big part of the strategy, right?
So is what you're driving at the fact that like even if your game is varied enough, people are craving something new, essentially? Like
I mean, I think there's something very interesting about seeing what strategies people bring into a new setup if they don't have much time to prepare.
I see.
Like right now, there's some imbalance where I think approximately half the participants have thought about this for a long time, and half have just for a few months or even less. Yeah,
More or less.
yeah. It's similar sort of when you think of a card game and they release a crap ton of new cards. If you just drop a new format, give people 2 weeks to prepare, what do they think should claim day one? How do they think this ending should be played? Well, some people might not think that's part of Mafia. For me, I think it's entertaining for a viewer. It's entertaining as a player, and it rewards homework in a way, which I think most competitive sports do. So yeah.
I mean, the value of having something repeated, like if we just deviate from card games and go to like the best esport of all time, and you can fight me on this one, but like Counter-Strike has changed very little over the past 15 years, right? And like the fact that you can just repeat the same exercise over and over and over again allows you to have this really consistent competition at the top without the game changing too much, versus something like FIFA that changes every season, or like at least every year. So there's certainly the argument that like maybe if season 1 is successful, we could run this setup for one more season just to see people. Okay, season 1 was like the warm-up season in which people were first introduced to this setup. And then season 2 is where, okay, so we've explored some of the tactical depth. The setup has become more popular. Have people done their homework and done something new and interesting with it? And also, there's the logistical reason that you want the viewer to already have some familiarity with the concept, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm excited to see how much creativity there will be in the league.
Yep.
I certainly think dropping something new out of nowhere is more likely to lead to good or bad creativity.
Right. And then it's a question of at what point you do it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I think we can move on to our next talking point, which is what are the consequences? And Ellie has been in quite a few of these practice games, or at least watched the VODs. But what are the consequences of bringing the 3 different groups of people together? And we're gonna just name them: live players, forum players, and video mafia players. And like, what are the we're obviously seeing some tensions between those groups just in deciding like how the games are gonna be played, but obviously there's also value to doing this. So like what is your impression so far? Like, is this a successful experiment, or should we have just focused on a single group which we dump into this new medium?
I think it's successful because one, what you're trying to do, right? I think just grouping into 3 groups is a bit direct. Yeah, like I think the vast majority of people have experience in all 3 in some form.
Yep.
Like I think every player from forums, except for maybe just me, has played a video and a lot of live before. I'm not sure if this is just true, but I think that's true. And a healthy chunk of the video players play on forums, and I'm not sure about the live. I think a lot of those come from you guys, but
it's my impression that a lot of the live players have only ever played live. Like
some of them might have played forum, but definitely not video.
Yes.
And obviously the clash is on the different opinions on 1, what is Mafia? And 2, what should Mafia reward? And in that sense, it's important, I think, to bridge the communities. I think everyone here, our goal is to have this game grow in some form. Right?
Hopefully.
Hopefully
people's goal is to have more people to play Mafia with.
Yeah. But in terms of, I don't think there's a lot of playstyle difference. I think there's just a confidence difference. It takes a certain degree of confidence when it's your first or even 5th time on a Zoom looking at a bunch of strangers or semi-strangers' faces and feeling the need to verbally speak up against them or verbally accuse them of something. For me, the biggest change was the immediate nature of the game. Not being able to sit back, relax for 10, 15, 24 hours, trying to figure out what's going on, and you just have to do it live. And that's caused internal panic, and not as extreme, but a very different effect. So I think, obviously, the video Mafia players are the most common. The other question is, are they correct about strategy more often than not? And I think that's more fuzzy. Namely, 1, is there a new setup for everyone? And new in the sense that it's only half a year at most, I think.
Even less.
Yeah, even less. But yeah, I don't think there are a lot of downsides, honestly. It's just figuring out a way to make everyone comfortable, and that requires structuring the rules of the game somehow.
What about the
Yeah.
what is mafia conflict that you're outlining? How do you see that shaping out?
I
it
don't
that
think that's a medium problem. I don't think that's a video versus live versus forum problem. I think it's just that each of those mediums have developed a setup or type of setup they're most familiar. Like all those setups could be swapped into the other medium and could still make sense.
Yep.
It just so happens that each one has a primary idea of what is balanced, what is the good game of Mafia, what is a good setup. So yeah, and I think even within communities, there's disagreement on that. Yeah.
Sure. I
So
mean, this is part of the, I guess, feedback we got from a lot of forum mafia people, specifically in which we heard, oh, like Alien is an awful row, and like Alien, just for those of you who don't know, is an activation jester. It's a two-step jester, two-step joker. Because I guess in that medium it just doesn't work. So in some way, I guess the medium informs this.
Yeah. That's definitely true. When a game is too long, it's more important for the win percentage to be balanced. But when a game is, in this case, 45 minutes, 1 hour, it's less important. It's over. And especially when you're rewarded, you're heavily rewarded for doing well with a lower probability.
Yep. Alan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, right, I think to Ellie's point, the video mafia people are more confident with the format, and then the live people are more confident with the setup, and then the forum people don't necessarily have either of those things to hang their hat on. But I think
thank God they're playing, right?
Right. So, but I think they've adjusted fine. Like, I don't really see a difference there. And I think maybe the advantage the forum mafia people bring is they're willing to do their homework, right? So because the other two are used to more real-time games that happen in the span of an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, and the forum people are, like, in my impression at least, certainly much more like diligent about thinking about the setup and asking questions and ironing out all the rules issues and so on. So I think each group brings something unique to the dynamic. And then regarding roles and formats, I think so. Yes, I think that certain setups are better suited to certain formats, but I think there could also be a large amount of bias there in the sense that you show up in that format first, and the setup happens to be whatever it is, and in your mind, those two things get tied together, and you become more. And I know I certainly experienced this. Like, you become more resistant to seeing that setup played in a different format or seeing new setups played in the same format. So.
Well, this is very nicely saying that every group thinks the other people's setups generally suck and our setup is best. Right?
Sure, and yeah, I mean, essentially
that's your initial reaction, at least.
I think that's directionally correct, and I know I have that visceral reaction whenever I see other setups.
I mean, no, for me, the single most extreme case of that was when I first heard there were no flips in the Daily Mafia setup. My initial reaction was question mark. And then I played a game with them and watched a few VODs, and it made more sense. Like, their games are longer, it's a different style.
And it also informs one of the important game mechanics, right? It informs the game mechanic of, say, do you have two Mafia kill power during the night or something like that. So it somehow functions within the world of the game, and it makes it work. So, like, I think every group has found a bunch of setups that just work. But convincing the other group that these setups work is the hard part. So hopefully through this tournament, we can convince the world that, like, yes, you can have 4 teams in a game and still have a competitive setup, right?
I mean, like, the end goal is which setup and which medium ends up getting the most people in the long run, right?
I don't think it has to be framed in that way. Like,
it shouldn't be a competition because, like, the rising tide lifts all boats, right?
No, it's not a competition, but I think correspondence chess is not popular. It's not
right. Sure. I mean, I think what you're saying is that as a result of, like, popularizing all the groups and all the setups and the communities they're from, some setups will attract more people.
And then because more people, they'll get more exposure, maybe money, and then that stimulates really hard.
Sure.
Right?
So yeah, in a sense, there's like you could argue, sure, that there's some sort of competitive landscape there, but yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say. But I wouldn't say that's like the agenda each group is pushing necessarily. Yeah.
Ellie, how long would you say it took you to get used to speaking to heads in Zoom? Because you're a complete newcomer. Like a month ago, we knew each other kind of, but like you didn't know we were doing Mafia. We didn't know you were doing Mafia. Then we started doing video Mafia almost at the same time. Like, how long did it take you as a player? Because like Alien and I are
To feel
almost
comfortable.
Yes, because we're not playing, and we're not playing much. Like we've played each maybe 2 or 3 games.
I did an interesting approach. It was after I decided I was participating in this league. I had heard Mafia All-Stars, I think, was the rowdiest group. So I went and just sat through 3 hours of their bots.
You did your homework.
Yeah, and that certainly helped me get conditioned for the next round, like, to know what to expect. No. The first time was the hardest time. I'm not used to showing up in a call having done no research on anyone. Even in a forum game, I researched the entire player list first before signing up.
And you've gotten some flack for that, right? I mean,
no, I've gotten a lot of flack for being too programmatic. But I don't think it's something hard to get used to if you're okay with your face being on camera. I think the biggest barrier is, okay, everyone can see me, hello. Everyone can hear me, hello. If I do something stupid in the span of this 45 minutes, I'm live. Oh well.
Yep. I mean, it gets back to the point where you have to be comfortable. And once you're comfortable with the specific groups of, like a specific player base, I guess, then it gets a lot easier. So, like, I think what people should see in the VODs at least, like, there are no serial killers here, there are no psychopaths or, like, sociopaths who are just here to make everybody's life miserable. Well, maybe one. But, like, you're bringing the problem with you, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was a really psychopathic laugh, at least, but that's cool.
And this happens almost every time we gather together to play Mafia in any format, really. I don't think it attracts, like, the worst of people, which is a good thing. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, I feel like that's a low bar, but yes, I agree.
Yeah.
The people, I would say the people it attracts are like smart and charismatic and
in at least some way, right? It doesn't just have to be the academic types. That,
sure.
like...
I mean, I think this goes to the broader point that I think we believe certainly that there are many valid and good ways to play Mafia, and a lot of that is a function of your personality and what you're willing to do. And I think you can make your personality work for you in certain ways. And because Mafia is a team game, it can embrace all of those personalities at the same time.
Yeah, no, especially I think people will bring new techniques based on their background, based on who they are to the league, to the setup. For me in particular, I played on forums for 11 years now, and I'm not a talented player in the sense that I'm not naturally good.
You just work really hard.
Yeah, any and all results are based on absurd amounts of research. And I've been thinking about how to implement that in this video format. It's much, much, much harder. We talked about this. Forums, data is there for you to play with. I tried transcribing games. It is
no.
It
Don't
is
do
a
that.
horrible. I tried to straight transcribing games with timestamps. It was no fun. I tried isolating someone's cam and recording all their body movements. It was no fun. So we're still figuring that how to effectively do research.
Thank God for Zoom moving people around, so you can't do that.
Yeah. We're still trying to get out how to.
Yeah, I mean, but like, given that that's your spike as a Mafia player, right, to be prepared, right, and I think the conclusion would be essentially like what Shakespeare was saying about me, which is that just having thought of many of those hypothetical scenarios beforehand, so that you're just more likely to recognize the patterns as they occur in the game. I think it's like playing blitz chess, right? Like, versus correspondence chess, right? So
every time after I finish the game and I'm confused by an ending, I tell myself to sit down, spend 3 hours, and write down a bunch of 4-player endings and solve them.
Riley, I think you're just the most dedicated player we've ever had.
Sure, but like,
I still haven't done it yet.
If we go back to like the difference between a normal setup and like the Lies Club setup, the Hungarian setup in this case, I think a huge chunk is that we're no longer just dealing with a game of deception, naturally, but we're also dealing with like a very strategic game. For example, like there's some situations in which you might want to kill the hunter to take out an activated alien potential when you have one Mafia left and a kill to give, or something like that, which situations don't necessarily occur in a very raw light game because your only strategy is kill the other team.
Yeah, no, strategy often supersedes your reads, just probabilistically for the setup, which is a pro and a con, for sure.
Sure, but yeah. I think in a way it makes the game more accessible to a wider array of people, because if people don't necessarily have the Mafia expertise, what we would call the core Mafia skill set of just deceive other people about your true intentions, like there's a second strategic / logical layer that lives on top of that more people can access. Like as long as you understand the game mechanics, explaining why something may or may not be a good play, like sense reads, starts to make a bit more sense, and I think lowers the cost of entry for quite a few people. So this is, I think, another pro of having such a setup.
Yeah, I think, and I think it's on us to sort of help people get past the initial barrier to entry, which is just learning all the rules, because I think people can see that as like the barrier, right? Whereas we want to get them over that hump so they can see that, okay, now that I understand the rules, I can understand at least, I don't know, like half of the skill in the game, right? Which is what those rules imply.
The part that's hard about this is not for the players. You get the rules once you play it a few times. How do you communicate the rules to someone who just wants to watch? I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yep, I mean, hopefully with the casts or with the casters we can do a bit of a better job. Like yesterday we had another co in which I think you said something very smart, Ellie, which is the cast shouldn't be just about the game. It shouldn't be like the casters projecting themselves as players. It should be about the casters explaining the obvious for the people who might have missed it, just to lower the cost of entry again. And I think this is something we'll start doing in the future. But I think it's time to move on to the meaty part. I think Lexi and a few other people in chat are here for, which is just explaining that amazing game with the double Mafia suicide. So
introduce your beautiful widget first.
Yes, so we have this widget. It's currently in beta. At some point in the future, we're gonna make it accessible for every Mafia community that wants to use it. We colloquially call it Scarlet. Because we like naming our tools with female names that make sense. So in this case, we have here the Scarlet for an 11-person game that took place last Wednesday on the Liars Club Twitch. The VOD is unfortunately not up on Twitch, but it's up on YouTube. So if you see the YouTube link on your screen. Unfortunately, it's in bit.ly because we don't have the name on YouTube yet, but if you throw us a subscribe, we're one step closer on YouTube. So go ahead and do that if you want.
I think maybe we should go through the whole game quickly, and then
we should go to the whole game quickly and then explain and maybe show a few of the moments that were more interesting. Yeah, sure. So the player list in this game was Siggy Wiggy Chicken Sleep, Hito, just going clockwise from the top, Douglas, Rich, Challenger, Ellie, Joker, Lexi Cat, Sir Fabulous, and Joey.
I think the important part is 11 players.
It was 11 players, so if you type ! Rose 11, which I'm actually gonna do that in chat right now, you can see what rows were in the game, and then if you do ! The name of the row, then you can see more about that row. And we're just gonna go, I think, with the God mode. So currently we're not able to see anybody's row. But if we go to God mode, suddenly the image pops and you start seeing everybody's row. The rows are color-coded. So if you're orange, you're town. If you're gray, you're Mafia. And if you're green, in this case, you are Hito and you're the alien. So
and one thing this doesn't show that was very key to the whole game was that I was the thief.
It does actually show it, Ellie. If you look at next to your name, there's this black square. And the legend explains that you were the thief.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So this is pretty cool. And then it explains that Joey was Hito's proxy.
Yeah, maybe I think one thing that probably should be indicated somewhere is obviously what the missing card was, which I'm realizing isn't quite there yet.
It isn't quite there, but the missing card was Cupid. As you can see, there were no lovers in the game, which would have been signified in purple or pink.
Pink, yep.
Pink. I mean, I have zero color recognition. I'm sorry, Alien. For me, all these colors make very little sense beyond the basic: is it red, green, or blue? In any case, so the game starts in the Eclipse. This was the player list. During the Eclipse, Ellie, who was the axe in this game, axed Joey's tongue, so the next day Joey couldn't speak, which was very painful for him because this was one of the 2 times he was axed. During day 1, we had the nomination of Siggy Wiggy, Sir Fab, and Douglas, who were 3 townspeople. Douglas claimed special, but he didn't say anything else. And I think this was one of the first key moments in the game. After Douglas's defense, he said the town should kill Sir Fabulous. Sir Fabulous was killed and revealed to be not Mafia. So, Alien, why should have Douglas said more given he was the police officer?
I mean, it's not.
Or should he have? Let's.
Yeah, I think it's more like. Well, okay. Again, do you want to go through the whole game first and then come back to this, or do you want? I mean, we're fine doing it either way.
Let's go through it step by step so we can explain what's going on.
Sure. I think. Right. So the key thing with 11 is that there's no prostitute and there's no hunter. So in some sense, it's easier to claim because you know you're not going to get disabled at night. But if you soft claim and then you don't give your actual information, it is vulnerable to precisely the play that was made the next night. So it's not that the move in itself is bad, it's that there is a potential counter strategy, which now it's controversial, like whether the trade-off is worth it, but and Ellie can speak to whether he thought it was worth it at the time.
I mean, in my opinion, for a lot of stuff
let's show what the strategy was first, and
Okay.
then. So Ellie, so during the night, the Mafia targeted one of their own, who was Chicken Sleep. So
Who was the bomb?
Chicken Sleep was targeted. She was the bomb. So Ellie, what was going through your mind when Chicken Sleep said she wanted to target herself?
So what happened was, I forgot, I think I typed in Douglas or someone normal. And then Chicken Sleep typed in chicken. And then Challenger typed in chicken. And I typed in question mark in Alien's chat. And asked him what happens if the vote becomes tied 2-1. So eventually I was informed that the majority wins, so I decided to hurry the night along and type in chicken. I was of the opinion that the doctor would almost never save chicken in that situation because 1, there was a PR claim, and 2, I think chicken was relatively sketchy day 1.
I see.
So the only value in that play was, I mean, and this was important in that she started her own name first and not Challenger, in that she was the bomb. So I think when she types her own name in first, it's saying, I am the bomb.
Yep.
So it was evaluating the value of that, of trading her 1-for-1 with Douglas, who was basically. And I was confused at first, but anyway, my opinion on a lot of this stuff, like the play here, and like even Douglas's claim, was that it should be probabilistic, sort of like poker. In a lot of situations, you should sometimes shove some percent of the time, call some percent of the time, and fold some percent.
Sure.
And especially with a long tournament where people have VODs, I think actions like these, there isn't a right action. There is a solution where you should do something N% of the time and do something N%.
It's a mixed solution for the mathematically inclined. You should,
because otherwise, and I know this is a side note, but the biggest thing with forums is I think some live stuff I've watched is most people do the same thing in every situation. And as anyone knows from poker, you get a large enough sample size for the game becomes easy. Yeah, so yeah, it is a mixed solution here. But I think sometime the Mafia has to do this play probabilistically.
Alien, can you explain what the upside of doing this was, in case Douglas was the doctor?
You mean in case Douglas was the doctor,
Yes.
or in case?
In case Douglas is the doctor and you Mafia Suicide Chicken Sleep.
Sure. I mean, so the whole concept of the Mafia Suicide, of the bomb specifically, is that you're hoping to get upside either way. So one upside is you get saved, right? So you made the doctor waste their save, and then usually you can use that credibility to stay alive for most of the rest of the game if the doctor comes out and says they saved you. The point of sacrificing the bomb is you can take out someone if it doesn't work. If you trade the bomb for the doctor, so doctor doesn't save you and then you bomb the doctor, I would still think that's worth it, simply because, first of all, you're sort of exercising more control over the parity of the game. You're essentially guaranteeing you're going to be able to kill every night, barring the proxy. And Yeah, I mean, the Doctor never gets to use their save, so it's just...
It's just good, right? Mafia
just
gets
good,
one kill for free.
Right. And
A consideration here also has to be the position Chicken Sleep is in, the position her teammates are in.
Sure. So I don't think Chicken Sleep expects to live there, but she always gets to trade herself for one of the specials as long as Douglas wasn't lying. Trading for a policeman who didn't auto-check seems good. Trading for the Doctor seems even better, since you're, like, taking away so much power from the town. And the fact that she targeted herself seems like, okay, this is not a lover play. Like, Chicken Sleep confirms that she's not a lover, even though you already know that, because you were thief between Axe and Cupid.
right. And so you can argue, like, again, the next level is that sometimes maybe on your defense as a townsperson, doing what Douglas did is not such a terrible thing, right? Like, people fake claiming, of course, is a whole separate discussion on how good it is and whether
Townspeople should fake claim.
Yeah, and like whether getting shot at night because they think you're a PR is worth the confusion that you caused a town upon your death.
And video mafia people have this very rigid mindset that town should never do that.
Because I don't know if it's. I mean,
we're not endorsing that. If you think a play can work in the league, like, we're not gonna scold you for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think some video mafia think that.
The vast majority of plays should be done some percent of the time.
Yes, I absolutely.
That's
agree.
mathematically
That's the general thing. And I know, like, people like Rich and so on, like, fake claim things, right?
All
As
the
video
time.
mafia players. So it's not a uniform phenomenon, and I'm sure even
Well, but he does it as mafia more often than not. Right?
Sure.
The whole point is here that there's this belief that fake claiming special and dying without rescinding is extremely harmful. I used to share this mindset until I realized maybe this could work to the benefit of town.
Also, in particular, I was politely informed of this by one of our viewers. Thank you, Ellibereth. Day one, in Douglas's nomination, he actually said, "Doctor, please save me."
Yes.
So
this is very possible.
Yeah,
He did.
Yeah, so there's some additional information there to play with.
Sure. So Douglas saying that and not coming out as policeman is certainly a mistake. But I think this is the perfect response from the Mafia, which is just cash out the bomb, take away information from the town. Because the bomb never wants to be the last Mafia left alive. That's the last thing I think we should emphasize before we move on.
Right.
Because
the whole utility of the bomb, right, is dying before the other Mafia so that you can change the parity of the game.
So that you can cash in or kill when it matters. Like the whole transposition with the Hunter and the bomb. Like, Alien can speak about it at length because he had to devise an algorithm how to solve a game with that.
Yeah.
In any case, moving on to day 2, we see that Chicken Sleep dies. Chicken Sleep was the bomb. She took out Douglas, who was the police officer. And then there was nobody axed because Ellie had axed Douglas as well, which is something you should do just in case. Like, something wrong happens and like you make the town nominate the
Sure. I mean, in the case that the suicide doesn't work, right? I mean, in the case that the Doctor saves, you still don't want Douglas to talk. So, makes sense to axe him.
Yep. During day 2...
I think it's important here, Joey came out as Doctor.
Joey did come out as Doctor?
He did,
Yes.
and said he hadn't saved. I mean, and explained why he didn't save as well.
And it was a good reason to not save, because it was Chicken Sleep and not Douglas who was targeted.
Right.
The people nominated during day 2, one of them was Rich, who was executed. I think the other ones were Siggy.
Right. And I think it's worth noting, and maybe we can find that clip, is that Rich actually fake claimed police officer on that day. And said he had a red check on Lexi, which Lexi immediately fought back against, and was almost certainly the reason Rich got nominated. So, speaking of fake claims, like, especially after Douglas dies, maybe the utility of that play goes down a fair amount.
Yep. The next night, the Mafia targeted... Let me just pull it up, because
Should
it's
be
not
Hito,
clear.
I believe.
No, Hito was executed, correct?
Oh.
No,
So
I think
the-
we targeted Hito. I think we targeted Hito.
Oh, Hito died. Hito revealed to be...
And Joey did not save. Okay.
Yes.
Joey did not save Hito again, which we went over in the post-game. And Ellie axed Joey again, I believe? To complete...
Probably.
Yes, he did.
To complete his... complete domination of Joey during that day.
I think at some point in the very first game I played, I decided I would just auto-axe. And this is not true for the league. It's probabilistic. I decided I would auto-axe Joey every
Sounds like a good strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, well, okay. I mean, to be fair, like he's also a confirmed special.
That's human,
right?
Yeah.
He's also a confirmed special at that point, and like his reads on the game are going to be taken more seriously because people think he's Doctor.
Yep.
I was also, I mean, this came into play later. I actually forgot you could axe a vote. I was thinking I wanted to axe myself late game. I was trying to make it alternate, so it got to that.
Yep.
But, yeah.
So during the day 3, we started seeing something very interesting, which was Challenger was increasingly becoming more and more wary of one situation in which he would outright lose the game, which was Ellie and Joey being lovers, and I think he became overly paranoid of that.
Yeah.
To the point where he led the bandwagon against Ellie, like with great power. So Ellie, how did that pan out from your perspective? Like,
I mean, that wasn't that day, but yes, it started on that day.
Are you sure it wasn't that day?
Yes, because they had to.
It did start that day, though.
It started that day.
Challenger was slowly but certainly building up certainty that he wanted to kill Ellie before the game ended, which was just Mafia on Mafia paranoia with the lovers.
I was initially not sure if he was distancing or not. I was at first like, okay, he thinks it's smart to distance, sure. At first, that was my reaction. It didn't cross my mind that he actually wanted me dead until the events a few minutes later. I was shocked. The whole time I thought, okay, he's playing the long game. He's playing the long game. Because I think at that point, because this is total luck of the draw, I had gotten Cupid Axe as Thief, which is humongous advantage. I thought we were just going to steamroll and he was playing insurance somehow. So I wasn't too worried at this point. I think already now, or maybe the next day, people were like, I guess if Ellie's Thief Axe Cupid, we kind of just lose, but that's so fringe. And I was just like, yeah, you guys kind of just lose. And it was so fringe. That's what's going through my head. There's not...
Yeah.
I quite frankly wasn't worried about Challenger at all. It's like he can do what he wants.
Yeah, I mean, people believed Ellie was Cupid. I know, Ellie, you like fake claimed you made up a check, which came out.
Yes. So
You made up a check on Challenger.
No. I made it up on Rich. I actually forgot.
Yep.
I don't know if it was day 3 or day 4.
It was while Rich was alive, so certainly day 2.
No. I mean, I remember this. We can go back to the video, but like after Rich had died, Ellie said he had checked Rich, who was not a lover, and he was asked. He was prodded about it specifically, which is when he made up the check, and that like whole 15 seconds was
very awkward for Ellie.
Very awkward for Ellie.
Yeah, I think I want to review that. You can see in my face, but
yes,
shit, Cupid has a check.
Yeah, important to have that in your mind when you fake claim it.
I was sitting there just like confirmed town, and then
confirmed town, shit.
I mean, so the Cupid lie has a shelf life, even if people believe you, right? Like
I think I started with I forgot ...
Yeah, I mean, either the lovers have to die at some point, and then they're like, okay, that's Cupid, or you have to use your check, which is not as strong evidence, but you have to bring it up first.
Ironically, the same thing happened with Challenger yesterday, right? Where he became Cupid.
Yes.
And
in that case, he was Cupid and chose a lover, and again, forgot that he had to have a check.
And that's like one of the hardest things about lying as Cupid or like not Cupid, which is like if you want to protect your lover and you have to lie, you have to pick who you checked very, very carefully. Yes. And if you're fake claiming Cupid, you have to pick it even more carefully so that like you don't lead the town back to your co-conspirators.
Yeah.
So I think Challenger was like overly paranoid at this point.
But it's not over. I mean, like, so Joey's not using his save, right? And you can argue that maybe he should have at some point before he used it the next night. Like,
maybe, but you know that Ellie, like, out of like, Ellie just immediately claimed Cupid day 1, right?
Sure.
It wasn't like Joey had a chance of being Cupid. Either because Joey was Doctor. So
sure. You can argue that there was a lot of contextual evidence that it wasn't that Ellie was a lover. It was that Ellie knew there was no Cupid.
Yep.
This was my first game as Mafia. I was making this setup, and none of this was going through my head. I was just sitting there chilling, thinking the game was over.
I'm confirmed town. I'm Max. Easy game, boys.
Right. So Joker was executed that day, which was unfortunate.
In a defense against Ellie and Challenger, who were driving at each other and then somehow arrived at the conclusion they should kill Joker. I thought that was like very poorly played by the town at this point. I thought that like one of the two of Ellie and Challenger would have died for sure.
I mean, it's Thief Cupid X is hard. Thief Cupid X is hard. It's
It
like
is.
it's like when you have kings against aces. Yeah, it's very very hard to get
Sure.
out.
But if we go back at some point and just listen to those defenses, I think people would become more and more convinced that like the delivery is there.
Sure, and some people had it right. I'm pretty sure Siggy voted correctly. And
Siggy and Joker voted correctly, but Lexi and Joey voted the other way. So when like one of your confirmed town is voting the wrong person, obviously you're.
Yeah, I mean it's. Well, they didn't know he would vote that way, right?
Yep. I mean they didn't, but like you're kind of counting on it, and I think that Mafia was in a good spot either way.
Sure.
I mean, I thought so too, but there was some infighting going on.
Sure.
Right,
so let's
get
let's get to the point where I think Challenger's fear should have been like lessened, in which like Ellie committed Mafia suicide. Who initiated that? So the Mafia targets Ellie here.
So I thought Joey would save me for sure. I thought Joey would save me for sure. I was Cupid, and he still had to save up. I think anyone else. Okay, again, it's probabilistic, but a lot of the other people would have been a lot worse because.
Well, if Joey doesn't save, Joey just loses to the X.
Yeah. But I think me doing this increased Challenger's paranoia. Because I kill myself, Joey saves me.
Your lover saves you.
Yeah.
But where's the Cupid then? I think at this point, when you propose to kill yourself, and Joey is specifically the doctor, there's absolutely no fear that like the two of you are lovers, just because like
it's not like you're doing a Cupid shuffle with Joey, right?
Yes.
So where is the Cupid?
So just to explain for the viewers, so we're in this 5-person endgame at night, and the Mafia have to decide on their kill, and then the doctor has to decide on a save. So if the doctor chooses to not save Ellie in this case, who's targeted,
5 or 6.
It is 5 at night.
Yes, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and I also made the controversial play. I'm still not sure if it's correct or not. I asked my own tongue and not someone's vote. But...
Well, I mean, at this point, I think the less you appear on camera, like especially if this is your first game as an actual Mafia in this setup, like the better it is for you. Just in case, like you let another one slip.
I mean, from a game theory point of view, I think there's one that's better more of the time. And,
sure, axing like
it should be axing the vote, right?
Axing Challenger's vote or something.
Yeah.
But in any case, like if you're Joey and you see Ellie's dying, you're thinking the axe is always gonna axe a vote to try to go for the win there. So you just can't let Ellie die, especially since he's like claimed Cupid. So you're thinking like you're not lover, Ellie's not a lover if he's like targeted at this point, like one of his lovers has to be Mafia. So you have to save him. I don't think Joey should have let Ellie die. If he had, it would have been an epic moment which we would have been speaking about now instead of like this great Mafia win. But unfortunately, or like correctly, I think Joey saved there. Ellie got axed. Ellie couldn't speak for the entire next day. And it was these 4 people again.
You guys implementing the turn off of your webcam when you're axed was a big part of the decision.
Yes, so Ellie just disappeared for that entire day until he was nominated again by the push of Challenger. So Ellie was nominated against
Challenger and Siggy.
Against Challenger and Siggy, and then the final vote was between Ellie and Challenger. And Ellie died and revealed to be Mafia to everybody's absolute dismay.
The shocking moment here was Joey was all in committed on Siggy being scum.
I think it was between Ellie and Siggy, right? Because Joey kept voting at Siggy.
Yeah. Joey and I kept voting as Siggy. And
I can check.
And I thought from that point...
That's why, because they had missed the opportunity to just execute Siggy with Joey's vote, right?
Yeah, I thought the game was just over.
Challenger is... I still think it was Challenger versus Ellie, but you maybe remember correctly.
I remember thinking the game was over. And I thought Challenger was just going to swap his vote at the last minute. He had his fun distancing. But then that moment came when you guys said who was voting for Siggy, and only me and Joey raised our hands.
Yep.
And I just stood there like...
dumbfounded.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where I was like, what just happened?
Well, Challenger finally managed to kill you in his paranoia, expecting Joey to die, I think. And then for him to tie the game, but it didn't happen.
And I don't know. And at that point, I thought the game was over because I had been pushing Siggy the whole time. Yeah.
It was certainly an interesting position. I think here Challenger should have stuck with you being Mafia, because he's actually risking losing the game at this point if he doesn't survive the final 3. So at night, Challenger is facing Lexi, who was actually Doug's check, but he never came out with it. Then the confirmed townsperson in Joey, who he has to kill, and then Siggy. So it's certainly a very interesting situation in which you have to consider whether, like, Siggy was so vehemently against Elia's Mafia. So Joey dies here. Joey dies here every time, just because you want to keep the uncertainty going. And we had this interesting dynamic between Lexi and Siggy, who initially went against each other, but then the final 2 nominated ended up being Challenger and Siggy. So what was your impression now that you were dead, Ellie? Like, what was, like...
To be honest, I was with my other scum buddy, Chicken Sleep, on Discord, freaking out about what just happened this whole day. Whole day. I think there were about 20,000 question marks typed. I thought it was over. I originally thought we just lost because I thought I had made it really obvious that Siggy was town. And I think between XC, and I think it's obvious from a town's point of view, something had gone wrong. Someone had screwed up. And I think from challenge, I looked at the day for a few seconds even, and I just thought it was so obvious, maybe because I was informed. Out of pure disgust, I was just like, I'm done.
Yep.
No, I later watched.
We can.
Siggy eventually ended up getting executed, right?
Right.
Siggy got executed and Mafia won. It was, in the end, first Challenger was nominated, then Siggy was nominated. And Lexi finally hammered Siggy to give Mafia the win. And it's not necessarily her mistake, it's just the combination of the entire game in which Challenger hard bust Ellie like the entire time. And people didn't. So Challenger has this clip of him saying, "Why would I do this to Ellie if he's claimed Cupid axe?" And nobody figured out that he was paranoid about lovers, I think, at that point.
I mean, I don't think anyone figured out this particular.
I think Siggy
But
knew.
yeah, I mean, Siggy. I mean, I don't know if Siggy necessarily thought the whole busing was because of the paranoia, but Siggy definitely mentioned in his defense and during the day that Challenger just messed up. Like, there was a clear winning play in executing Siggy with Joey.
No, I think Siggy made an excellent point that day, which is people mess up. I mean, his words were a bit harsher than that.
People fucked up.
Oh no, I think those people are awful about you.
I just need to turn on my lights.
But I think the point that people screw up and
that is not some deep play necessarily.
and analyzing who screwed up, why they screwed up is an important part of this setup. It's a complicated setup where people have very little time.
I mean, it's also why they screwed up, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think a large chunk of this setup, which people are not attuned to yet, and I think that's like one of the parts we want to leave at some point, this discussion with, is you have to understand people's motivations more than you have to read them town, not town. Because people have a varied number of motivations here. Like, you could be PR, you could be lovers, you could be innocent lovers, right? You could be alien trying to stay alive for longer. And certainly, like, reading that motivation and then deciding what strategically is best for you is, I think, the core part of this setup that, like, is currently being underutilized. Maybe people are saving strats for the major, you know, like, people are saving strats for the regular season. But I think this is certainly something we don't see enough of. Like, just thinking, and maybe Siggy nailed it here, I don't have a clear memory, like, saying why, not just the Challenger fucked up, but why Challenger fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, Lexi in particular had a difficult task of making personality evaluations on two people she didn't know. Like,
yes,
and that's incredibly.
And from her perspective, because the two people, I mean, I'm pretty sure the two people, after it got narrowed down in the previous day, were Siggy and Ellie. But like, from her perspective, right, there's a world in which they're both Mafia, and that's why it wasn't obvious that Mafia was just going to win that day, right? Which is what Siggy was claiming. So there's a legitimately different task there, difficult task there.
Yep. So that was that game. We had a lot of fun spectating and adminning it. I was very happy when I figured out that Ellie was not Cupid, because I don't see the Rand But after that like 15 seconds of awkwardness, I was like, wait, activated alien Ellie is actually not Cupid. I think it was like
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a good live liar.
No, just remember, folks, if you know Cupid's not in the game, or you're a lover,
be better at lying about it.
remember that you have a check.
Yep.
Like, remember and get ready to tell people what it is proactively.
And mechanically speaking, I think there was another situation much earlier, just to get back to when Hiro was... I think Hiro was nominated at least, and I think Hiro coming out as the alien might have been very beneficial for both himself and everybody else involved.
Yeah. I mean, Hito's an interesting case. I think somebody said he was likely a third party.
Sure.
One of me or Alexi. He's just an interesting case. I think he would agree. He plays third party in a very distinct way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hiro
I mean,
dies night 2.
And I mean, the alien has the job of needing to live no matter what, right? Up to including using their life as the bargaining chip for a draw.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, I think in this game specifically, where Joey is your proxy, unless you get activated like night 1 or night 2 at the latest, I think you should be claiming. Unfortunately, Hiro obviously died night 2, so he didn't have that chance. And there's a question as Mafia, do you want to be killing the alien? Which I think is the wrong move. For many reasons. Like, like the alien can swing the game back in your favor. But let's look at Twitch chat to see if they have any questions.
I mean, the game was 2 heart attacks and a half.
So Twitch chat, the floor is open for your questions. I'm gonna convey them to Activated Alien. Lexi is explaining her challenger vote, or like the lack of challenger vote. Let's see, Twitch chat is mostly challenger, chicken sleep, and...
It's all the players being like,
Yeah.
No, there's a question about ties. There's a good question.
P-Man Praise is asking how the games end in ties. So there are quite a few ways in which a game can end in a tie. The most common one is you have 2 people nominated and an even number of people voting, at which point the vote splits evenly 3 times in a row. At that point, we just say, okay, the game ends in a tie between all the surviving teams. There are a few more fringe situations, say, for example, Mafia tying at night, when they can't decide on a good kill and there's less than 6 players alive. Yeah. Activated Alien had such a game in his club very recently.
So I think that tie is worth maybe like
its own video.
Just like briefly, because I have had some questions on that, right? So if there are 5 players alive or fewer, then the Mafia have this option to tie at night, and it's essentially when the 2 Mafia, so they have to be 2, can't agree on the kill. But sort of the condition surrounding that is that the reason they can't agree on the kill needs to be related to the lovers, essentially, because we don't want it to be used as simply an out to force a tie in what they might consider a lost endgame.
And that's already captured in the number of players you can do it for, right?
Right.
If there's 5 players left alive and neither of you is a lover, you should have no difficulty deciding on a kill.
Yes. Yeah, there's an interesting question in the chat from Siggy about the 11-player versus the 13-player setup in terms of which is more fun.
I want to get to that real quick. The last way you can tie is if everyone dies at the same time, which is so. For example, you have a Mafia and a Hunter as the last 2 people, and you're in the night phase. The Mafia kills the Hunter. You wake up. The Hunter kills the Mafia. That's a tie between Mafia and Town. So that is another way in which the game can tie. And similarly with like chain reactions with bomb and so on. If everyone is just wiped out, then all the people who were alive before everyone was wiped out, the teams that were on are tied. Yeah, but let's hear the thing.
Yeah, but for 11 versus 13, I mean, his question is he finds 11 more fun. Why do you guys prefer 13? I mean,
because I think it has the prostitute.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what Ellie has an opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we talked about this at some point in that the game. One of the things is how much deduction does the Mafia have to do? Okay, it turned out in this 11-player setup, the Mafia had to do some deduction about lovers. But I think, and it really depends on how you feel the game is. I think some people just really dislike rolling Mafia when there's only line and 0 deduction. You can argue that's part of the game, but I think adding the prostitute in particular makes it so the Mafia have to be on their toes, and they also have incomplete information, or much more incomplete information, and have to think about their kills in more than one axis.
Right. So I think one of the hallmarks of a good setup, we think, is that every player has something to figure out, even the ones who have a lot of information about the starting state of the game. So if the Mafia have to figure out who the prostitute is, and vice versa, then that gives, they get to partake in sort of the experience of playing Mafia, which is reading aspects of the game, right? Versus simply defending the information they already started with.
I mean, to Siggy's latest comment, I'm not sure if 13 makes more chaos makes something less strategic.
I can address that, and I think like one of the other reasons we like it is something that Challenger introduced. He didn't introduce it originally, but he introduced it to the league called blitzing. So when you don't have the prostitute in the game, the town special powers are so much better than they are when the prostitute is in the game, because you can claim and expect to be saved by the doctor as the policeman. And the doctor can claim to save his life, and in general it's much harder to push a mislynch on a town special in this setup. While in 13 you see people dying without revealing what they are, which adds a bit of an interesting mechanic. Like you have more points of choice.
And prostitute and hunter are very punishing rules, so the 13 is definitely a lot more
Yes.
punishing.
The reason we don't use 12, which is the middle ground, which is 13 minus a hunter, is that it's extremely mafia-sided. Like just
as you might expect.
As you might expect, yeah. You just take something that's more or less balanced and you add the most powerful row in the game to it, and suddenly it becomes like extremely mafia-sided. Similarly, the whole reason we're not doing a 14-person setup, even though we have it, is that the town row we add to that, which is unrelated to the league, is like super swingy and super powerful, almost unkillable at night. So you literally have to get to the end game with 2 Mafia to win the game against that. Or you have to get lucky with the bomb. So
Is that the Traveler?
that is the Traveler. So if you're interested in what the Traveler does, we can explain it the next time we like have a break or something.
Yeah.
Talk about the Traveler. You guys should run an errata for the
Sure.
thing.
But for 11 and for 13, we feel the setups are balanced. And for 13, we feel there's a lot more strategy going on than for 11, because the town play for 11 is just very straightforward.
The town is more constrained and has to work around the prostitute. Everyone has to work around the prostitute.
Including the Mafia. And the prostitute has a good situation, right? The prostitute
Having a good time.
Yes, and I just want to bring it up. One thing that we're not seeing enough of, and maybe Alien has seen more of it than I have, because he's seeing the mod side. But prostitute at some point should stop disabling people. Like you can self-target as prostitute and be fine with it.
Yeah, I've seen it. People, I've definitely of all the games I've modded for the preseason so far, a couple of prostitutes like kept disabling Cupid after they figured out who Cupid was. I know that Colin certainly disabled himself a number of times in a game where he was fairly sure he wasn't going to get killed.
Good job, Colin.
So
I did that with 5 because I knew it was coming. It was basically
right. Like I think Ellie kept disabling 5 who was a townsperson. So it's not you don't have to disable yourself.
But you should not disable random people who have nothing going for them.
I mean, maybe broadly the strategy is you use your first few disables to sort of get the lay of the land and maybe see if you can figure out a Mafia without ruining their life. And then after that, you sort of try to make sure you don't get killed by them through what you do in the day phase. And then you just...
Okay,
I think disabling the doctor is really what you're going for. And once that's done, you're just trying to not get killed and not disable the Mafia.
Twitch chat, do you have any other questions?
I'd also be happy to talk about forum and tech stuff. I know more.
Sure, I think that would be a different podcast, my friend.
I know.
So, this is this podcast format. Obviously, this is the first time we're doing it. If you have some feedback for us, like either PM us on Discord or
was this boring? Was this interesting?
So we're pulling 20 viewers without having any Sure, maybe we have a few view bots in there. Who knows?
There's a good question from Siggy.
Siggy, do you guys have plans on expanding the league to other Mafia platforms? I'm not sure Ellie, if you think you get the question, go ahead. I'm not sure I understand the meaning of this. Does it mean expanding the league to, say, Forum Mafia?
I mean, no. I think what he means is after this is over, you guys keep going, make it bigger.
Yes, obviously, that's the point.
We would love to. Yeah.
Season 2 will happen as
Right,
long as like season 1 is not a complete and utter failure. And like we don't see how it can be a complete and utter failure since the bar for it is literally are people having fun. And we think people are. So
and you know, we reached out to many communities to try and get this set up, and the people who are playing are just a subset of those, right? And hopefully if this goes well, we can use the games on our Twitch and, you know, all the goodwill, hopefully, that we accumulate with the various people playing to make the case for other communities to join us who may have been more on the fence this time around.
Yep.
So certainly we would love to expand it.
And obviously, like, we're putting in a lot of work behind the scenes to create like stuff like this widget. We are working on a few community tools on our website, which are also currently in beta. That we're trying to make go live about the time the league concludes.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's going to be pulled together at the last minute. And by the time the league is over, I think we should have a really good set of tools that many other communities can use if they want to.
Yep. So season 1 goes well. People see that like Video Mafia is not scary because people like Ellie and Zvangzuk and like quite a few other people who are newcomers are having fun. And then season 2 hopefully has more of these communities that like were on the fence about participating in the first place. Let's see what else Twitch chat is about. Yeah, so I think we're gonna cut off the podcast here. If you wanna come hang out in the Zoom, like we're probably like, at least I'm gonna be on for a few more minutes. But we're gonna just end the stream here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you have any feedback on the format, if you wanna like, if you wanna see some other guests, or if you wanna be a guest, just drop us. Yes, Ellie, show your sign, please.
I have to make a social media plug. Mafia451.com. Follow us on Twitter. Come to our website. We're going to have a YouTube. We're based around text Mafia, and it's specifically games for busy people. We're still coding stuff up. Yeah.
Everything is a work in progress. So yes, by all means, go check their website out. It looks quite cool. So
big work in progress.
If you want to be in Ellie's position right
We're
now,
making a phone app. We're making a phone.
Ellie,
Keep
you're
going.
a natural.
Keep
You're
going.
a natural.
If you want to be as good as me,
then don't play on. I'm just kidding.
Then get your experience elsewhere.
Yes. So if you want to be a guest and you have something interesting to reflect on, or you just like want to show up,
Hang out with us.
we're looking for guests for this for the next 5 weeks. So if you want to be here next week, talk with us. It's always going to be Mondays at 9 p.m. EST. For now, we're going to cut off the stream. Thank you so much, Ellie and Alien. And we're going to see you very soon. So goodbye, fans, and good luck.